So if you take the opposite, that exact subconscious programming, and they've been taught something different than what we're getting taught now at the younger generations of our culture. And now what's the proof in the pudding, right? Like, what is the fruit of that? And you can see statistically and numerically that having a different core value system and beliefs pushed upon you that business is good creates a completely different result that is disproportionate than what we have in the rest of our society.
Welcome back to another episode of the Debunking the Bee with your hosts, Brett, the jackass over here, and Laura, the biatch over here. So that's why it's called the Debunking the Bee. I know a lot of people ask, why is it
Welcome
called
back to the donkey
and the bee? That's the reason why.
Men are
how a jackass and a biatch
biatches.
can live together and
we work together
have a
to build an
tremendous, successful
extraordinary
life.
Tune
So
in
today,
to in your marriage,
we're talking about something real good.
entrepreneurship, and finances.
Because we do talk about marriage, entrepreneurship, and finances here. And today we're talking about something real good that's in correlation with one of those topics. What is it, Brett?
We're talking about money, money and business, how money is inherently good, that having money is good, that being a business person, an entrepreneur, somebody contributing to the economy is good. And there's a lot of pushback on that as we continue to get into a shifting political climate, and there's more push towards socialism. There's more push as we've gone through inflation towards corporate being bad, right? Big corporate's bad. There's greedflation and things like that. There's more push in our society to say, hey, that having money or being a business person striving for these goals is fundamentally bad, right? It's fundamentally flawed. You are selfish or not helping the country or your community or the world by striving for prosperity. So I completely disagree with that. I think that having money, striving for prosperity, contributing to the economy, hiring people, innovating in business is actually a benefit to not only yourself, but the whole country. And I want to take that position and unpack that a bit.
When you said that, it made me think of college. I don't know what your college experience was. We went to the same college, so I'm sure it's very similar. But I remember most of my professors in college would talk so negatively about people or individuals with wealth, about business in a negative light, which is so interesting because you're there to teach people to get into the business world or start their own business. But here they are kind of swaying you toward the opposite way. And so I thought that was an interesting concept even when I was early 20s going through that. And I think it kind of set my mindset in that money is bad because they were teaching it and I thought that they knew what they were talking about. And you're young and you think that your professors know everything. And so I think that kind of set my trajectory in a negative light toward business and money because of that.
Sure. So we went to college in California for some context. And yes, I don't think my professors ever came out and said money's bad, but they say it without saying it, right? It's
Exactly.
in the underlying programming, and they're definitely trying to program you while you're in college, one way or another. But I think it's important to acknowledge that. So there's definitely like, hey, if you are going towards, even if you're in business and you are looking towards nonprofit, right? Like, oh, therefore you are contributing more to society, right? You're doing something good. You're bringing value through your work in the professional business space, whether it's with college, whether it's this idea of nonprofit, whether it's even just in TV and movies nowadays, that, there is a push against growing wealth and that wealth is inherently bad. And I think that, it's kind of a separate subpoint here, but we are taught from family, from church, from school, even as a child, right? That not having money is bad, but having too much money is also bad. You want to be somewhere in the middle, right? Don't keep up with the Joneses because then that's bad. But ultimately, like if you are struggling, you need to step it up a bit, but you should kind of be in the middle of the pack, right? Follow the sheep. Don't get too ahead and don't fall too behind. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely programming on money here that says too much is bad.
I think it's in the movies. I mean, literally, you think about all the movies or the TV shows, whatever you're watching, even as a kid. the rich, wealthy guy was always, an a-hole. He was always a jerk. He treated people like crap. And so you have that negative connotation in your mind already. And so when you see it in real life, even if you see a lot of wealthy people who are really sweet and kind and caring, you see that one individual who is treating people really terrible, you still assimilate that in your mind. And so I always try to find those individuals who are wealthy, but who are super caring, giving, and generous. And then I'm trying to like build that muscle in my mind that's how we are. That's how I want to be. I want to be someone who has created wealth, but not just create wealth, to be able to give back and to, help individuals or community in need.
Yeah. So, it's funny. I was thinking about movies that showed a wealthy person and being generous. And, the first thing that came to mind was Mr. Deeds. You see the movie? It's with Adam Sandler.
Never seen that movie. No.
He's kind of this like silly guy. He inherits this wealth and he goes around giving it away. And I think he gave everyone in his town like a red, Ferrari or Corvette or something. But they still portray this person who like did not accomplish this for themselves, right? They were not that hustler, grinder person who put in the 60, 70 plus hours a week to build something, to create something awesome, right? It was still more of this like, he's kind of a silly guy who kind of stumbled in by inheritance. And therefore, in that context, it's okay. But, not if you are that guy who is overly working, right? Ahead of the flock as far as the sheep analogy goes and like working too hard, right? Like that's not okay. So it's a little interesting.
Yeah, I think it goes back to if you are in that league of working hard and it's paying off, right? You're creating wealth for yourself. I think it's looked down upon or frowned upon because it's actually shedding light on the average or the mediocre individuals. It's shedding light on their not doing much or just being complacent or being average. And so I think that's why it is created in a negative light, because I think they want to pull those individuals back down into the average or middle class because it's shedding light on them in a negative way.
Yeah.
And so
like the crabs in a bucket.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we touched on this for a second here, but this idea of, okay, yeah, if you want to pursue business and do great and grow something incredible, it is totally fine if you want to do that in the nonprofit world. And we're very involved with a lot of local nonprofits here. And, so we have some back end experience to give context for this. So at least in our experience, right? Like this idea that nonprofits do well and you can grow that and that is contributing more to society. Like there is definitely great things that nonprofits do and no comment on that side. But on the opposite side where, if you are a for-profit business, then you can't be doing well. You can't be helping society. And honestly, I think that most times for-profit businesses do more to help society than nonprofits. And obviously nonprofits do an incredible amount of good. But what I have seen a lot of times is the person who is running it, if it's a small nonprofit, is literally not paying themselves what their time is worth. They are doing this as a passion project and honestly very often struggling to pay their bills. They are not taking care of themselves. They might be providing a fantastic service for other people, but they're struggling themselves because of this. Or maybe they are hiring their team and again, paying less than what market value is. They're not being competitive with their wages because they're quote unquote a nonprofit. We're doing this to help people. So, we don't have a ton of income. Where if you took the same, or something similar in the business world and you are for profit, and if you're not providing a great profit, if you're not making sales, then you're not going to be profitable. You're going to go out of business. And ultimately, there is so much value in that model, right? In capitalism, because you have to be competitive on both sides of this. You have to pay competitive amounts, right? You're going to have a higher salary for your team if you are for-profit versus non-for-profit. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's going to be exceptions there. But overall speaking, right, like when you look at these big companies who are growing and doing great, especially like in the tech field and things like that, right? Google's paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for a lot of their staff, right? Like you can make incredible money in these for-profit businesses. And then to that same point, they are promoting society. Like they are literally pushing things forward. And it will be the same thing with AI. It's going to be for-profit companies that are really growing this sector and any other new sector and innovation because of simply supply and demand. If it sucks, no one's going to buy it, right? So I think from that perspective, sales are good, right? Making sales grows who we are as a culture and as a world.
I guess I kind of want to break down the term good, right? Because you say that business is good, and some people think business is bad, or money is bad, or money is good. And so I guess personally, when I hear that, I think that there's no real morality to money or morality to business. Like in my mind, like money isn't good or bad. It's a tool. It's like a shovel, right? You use it to dig a hole. Like it's a tool to purchase goods. And so I think that there's no morality to it. I think the person who has the tool can, decide on a moral decision that they're going to use with it because it's a tool. So when you say that, business or money is good, what do you really mean by that?
I think it's a good point you bring up. So let me separate off the two and say that I would agree with you that money is a tool, right? It makes you more of who you are. It can be used for good or evil. But business, I would say, is inherently good, meaning like it's fundamentally good. The laws of nature, that's kind of where I'm getting to, would tell me that business is good. And let me unpack that then. If you said, okay, let's remove business. If we decided it was bad, no business, right? No trade of any time, no sales of any kind. If you went back and said, okay, I am now a person, thousands of years ago, and there was no trade, right? Like I am a hunter-gatherer again. Everything that I want to eat, I have to either grow or kill or gather, right? Like if I want a new jacket, I have to go, shear a sheep. I have to have a sheep first, right? Like it would take us back to, almost the Stone Ages if you said you could not have any type of business, because business, you could say, is just sales. Or you could take it one step more simply and say it's trading. You go back to Native Americans, right? Like they didn't have cash, they didn't have Venmo, but they would trade, right? Fish for, sheep or whatever it is. And that's still business, that's still commerce. And if you look at it moving forward, even several thousands of years ago, societies grew because of trade routes. Those cities there blossomed because they were an intersection where other cities could come and trade their goods. So I would say this, that I know that business and sales, and by default, the making of money, is inherently good because without it, our society would completely crumble and take us back to the Stone Ages.
So to follow up with that statement, if there was no business because, say, the government came out and said, there's no more business, it's bad, we don't want it for our society, what do you think would happen?
We would all starve to death. No joke. Like anyone who was not farming would have no way for food. And honestly, it would go back to theft, right? If you couldn't even barter with the person, the farmer, the rancher, right? Like you would first and foremost starve. And if you couldn't get a way to get water, you would starve. If no medicine would be allowed anymore. You could not create medicine, right? Those are all jobs. No one's just going and doing it as a hobby necessarily, unless you're talking about like tinctures and things like that, right? Like everything would come to a screeching halt. Literally, like if you enforce this or some aliens came down and mind controlled us, right? Like 90% of the world's population would die within probably 6 months. They would probably starve to death, or they would die of dehydration or sickness or illness. All of what we have, right? Why the population on Earth has continued to snowball dramatically over the last hundreds of years is all because of business. It's all because of trade. And capitalism, whether you think it's good or bad, has promoted the growth of our world and innovation and medicine and technology and all of these things.
I think most people don't realize how much business affects their own lives. I think they only are aware of it when it can negatively affect their lives or if they're jealous of the success of that business. So for example, you get in your car and you drive, like if you drive a Ford, that's a business. You supported that business. If you're driving a car, you had to put gas into it. That's another business. If you're on a road, that's obviously another business. Like there's so many things that you use on a daily basis, your toothbrush, like your phone, you walk into a grocery store. It's like all these things you don't really think about, oh, I'm actually supporting this business by using this product or service. But if it's something that you don't use, that's not necessarily helpful to you, I think that's when you realize, like real estate. If I'm not in real estate and that guy's making a ton of money in real estate, he must be doing something bad. He must be doing something evil or against the law. So I think it's each person's perspective. I think when you change your perspective and realize, wow, like business it is good. We have to have it in our society in order for us to flourish. I think it's just realizing that and sitting down and being like, oh, wow, I actually use probably hundreds of businesses a day by just my daily activity.
Yeah, I like that perspective on it. I think that makes sense. When you self-judge someone and saying, hey, they're being too much or pursuing too much, it's probably because you don't use that product. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of other people who do use that product and they think, I am so grateful for this person, for the work that they're doing, for the innovation that they have, for growing their business and bringing these products into my area. It used to not be here and I used to struggle and have this problem. Mm-hmm. But now it is now here because this person or this group of people hustled and worked their butt off and grew their business and made sales and made money, mm-hmm. and therefore now have brought the solution to the problem I have closer to me and more available.
Do you know what I thought of when you said that?
What?
Okay, so all y'all listening, Brett and I aren't drinking alcohol and we're drinking instead kombucha every now and again. And so there's this kombucha called Cosmic Kombucha. We are not getting paid, but I'm just going to do a shout out to Cosmic Kombucha. They're here in Austin area and it's fantastic kombucha. It's our favorite kombucha and we look everywhere for this kombucha because they don't sell it directly online. You have to go to certain stores. And so they've created a scarcity, which, hey, more power to them. I love it. But that just reminded me of that is like, hey, like I'm really grateful that these two, it's a married couple who started this business, that they worked their butts off for this product because we really enjoy this product. And so, I don't know. It just made me think of that when you said that. I'm like really happy that they, took a leap of faith for our enjoyment. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would consider from that perspective, if you're hearing this, you'd be like, well, I think those type of people are greedy and growing their business too much and being too profitable. Maybe there's other people that they haven't been able to reach yet. You have an opportunity to buy that product and you says, that's not for me. That's no problem. But perhaps there's other people who do want that product and it's just not available to them yet. And it is their duty to help this world by expanding their business and offering these products. And ultimately, if it's not a good product, no one's going to buy it. Their expenses are going to be too high, their income's too low, and they're going to go out of business or they're going to change their product, right? That is the great thing about business. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't solve a problem, it goes away.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to bring up this book that Brett and I had recently read, and it's, Brett will kind of go into more detail about it, but it's called Thou Shall Prosper by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. And he goes into talking about the Jewish culture and how money and business itself is inherently good. So we both read this and we talked about it. We wanted to discuss it today on the podcast because it correlates with what we're discussing.
So thank you for introing that. If you come at it from this perspective, and there is a cultural push towards that business is bad. And, again, working too hard, outside of the work-life balance, which seems to be less and less hours of work each week and more hours of sitting on the couch doing nothing. If you're fighting against this idea and you have a cultural push in school, from your parents, from culture, from social media, to not push so hard, to not pursue business or making sales or wealth or money, you're fighting against this idea, right? And if you are driven like us and you really enjoy growing businesses, then some people actually look at you as like, hey, you're being too much, or perhaps you should put your attention towards something else. So I really think this book is interesting because he documents and he comes at it from the perspective of a group of people who their core value, their belief system, and they're taught from youth for generations, thousands of years, that business is good, right? And so he does an awesome job of putting it in context. And what he ultimately talks about, he is a Jewish rabbi, and he explains how For thousands of years, the Jewish culture has believed that business is inherently good. And if you're successful, ultimately it's God blessing you. And it's super interesting because he documents, okay, here is kind of a case study on Jews, looking at their business acumens, looking at their wealth, and looks at it from different perspectives. They are 2% of the American population, but they actually have way more than 2% of America's wealth. And I don't remember quite what the number is. But if you're saying, why is this group, this culture, so much more wealthy than other people in the United States and then, also in the world? Why do they have a disproportionate amount of wealth? It's because of their core values. It's because of what they believe. They don't have this outside mental oppression on them saying that business is bad, too much money is bad. What they actually have is the opposite, that wealth is good, that it is actually benefiting society, that making sales is benefiting society, growing your business is benefiting society. So therefore, you should do much of it. You're actually encouraged as a child, as you're growing up, to be in business, to grow a business, that having wealth is not a bad thing. It's actually a blessing from God. So if you take the opposite, that exact subconscious programming, and they've been taught something different than what we're getting taught now at the younger generations of our culture. And now what's the proof in the pudding, right? Like, what is the fruit of that? And you can see statistically and numerically that having a different core value system and beliefs pushed upon you that business is good creates a completely different result that is disproportionate than what we have in the rest of our society.
So I'm totally going to play devil's advocate here. You mentioned that wealth being a gift from God. And so that is kind of that statement can kind of hit people in a negative way. And so I kind of wanted to bring that back up again. There's this, I forgot the name of the guy. He's a preacher. He's on like...
Benny Hinn?
No, not him. Darker haired guy. He's maybe early 50s. Anyways, he preaches a prosperity gospel. Like, if, you're prosperous, that's because God has chosen you and bestowed all this wealth upon you. But I'm going to play it, like, again, devil's advocate. So does that mean that individuals who do not have wealth and are struggling for paycheck to paycheck, they're not blessed by God?
I don't think so. I really think that you kind of separate those two issues. I think that ultimately what you believe internally, like not what you think to yourself, but the programming below that, what you programmed in your subconscious mind, and therefore that's what you consciously think about, really will determine how you pursue money or how you pursue fitness or how you pursue your relationships or what you believe about yourself. Your self-confidence is all based on this underlying programming. And I think that in the context of this conversation, the best way to change your underlying programming about money is to believe that God thinks it's good for you to have it. And I would take it from that perspective on a practical level. I want to believe that God wants me to be wealthy. I would much rather believe that than God wants me to be poor. Mm-hmm. Now, he's never told me, does he want me to be wealthy or poor? But nonetheless, I would prefer that God wants me to be wealthy. But again, it goes back to this is a tool, right? Mm-hmm. Money is a tool. I can choose to therefore use it for good or for evil. So it's not that money is good or bad. It's inherently amoral, right? It has no morality to it. So from that perspective, I would rather choose to say, I want to believe that God or perhaps my family or that society wants me to be successful. They want me to grow my business. They want me to succeed in business to ultimately help the rest of us, right? And if you believe, therefore, that business is good, that making sales is good, that helping other people with more solutions that are practical to our society is good, then I think that's a benefit for everyone.
I'm going to say something that's really going to make a lot of people upset. So I'm going to say it anyways. I think that a lot of us are mentally broken in a lot of aspects in life. And I think with the one we're talking to now, financially, I think we're mentally broken in the area that we're supposed to just coast on by and just live paycheck to paycheck and not pursue wealth that it's okay to be average. It's good to be average. And I think that we've all fed into that lie. I fed into that lie for a majority of my early life. And so, but the perspective I take now is, and I've said this before on this podcast, that you are actually selfish if you're not pushing toward wealth and you're not pushing toward financial freedom, because all you're thinking about is yourself and your own family. You're not looking up and looking out to other individuals that you can help with your finances and with your time. And so I think when that was told to me that I was selfish for only caring about my finances, it like really stung. I didn't think that I was selfish in my area of finances until someone really kind of got the scales off my eyes with that. And so I think I just want to press our listeners that ask yourself that question. Am I pushing myself to be wealthy, or do I inherently think that it's negative, that it's a bad thing? Question yourself on it, because I thought it was negative at one time. And then when I realized that I was being selfish by only looking at myself and family, I was like, oh, wow, I really got to change my ways.
So to expand on that, from a practical aspect, I think if you wanted to realize what you believe first about money on the subconscious level, right? Like go back to what were you taught? What are these things that you think about money? Is money good or is money bad, right? Like, and not the amount of money you have. Is it bad if you had 5 times or 100 times more money? Would that be bad? What if you had less, 100 times less? Would that be bad? So what do you actually believe about money? If you identify those things and then you start changing what you believe, right? For us, I have gone through and studied people that have made buttloads of money and that I believe are role models of mine. They're inspirations. They are men of God who have been incredibly generous with their finances and then also grew businesses that changed our world. They added value. They created solutions. And I believe that is inherently good, right? That is business being inherently good and people who've gone before and actually prove that. So I wanted to really wash that over my mind several times with here's what I need to remove because I've been taught this. And actually a lot of times church will teach you that money is bad. Mm-hmm. They don't actually say it, but they kind of tell you, right? Too much is bad, right? Mm-hmm. And so that, and then school, and then let's add in what, I've identified what I want to remove. Now what do I want to add in to what I believe in my core values? And so for me, the practical way was let's study some people who have achieved what I want to achieve, who have built great businesses and great wealth and done what I would want to do with it, right? Like I'm not a very flashy kind of guy. I don't spend a lot of money, but I would love to have tons, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars to be able to be generous and give to that. Mm-hmm. And right now I don't have that. So I'm kind of bummed that I don't, because I would love to be able to be more generous. Mm-hmm. So how do I get there? I don't mean to bring this back, but I think it goes back to the mentally brokenness I think that we have. When you say, I want to make, hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, I bet you most people would be like, that's not for me. That's never going to happen. That's not on my cards, because they don't believe it for themselves. And so I think it goes back to the reprogramming of your mind and telling yourself that you can. Like, why can't you? Why not? Literally, why not? Why not you? Everyone's like, oh, not me. Oh, it's for somebody else. Well, why not? Why not you? Answer that question, like honestly. So I think it's reading books, like Brett said, that you can wash over your mind. I mean, we have many books on Audible that we listen to over and over and over and over and over again. And it kind of just slowly like creeps into your mind, and you automatically kind of just think about it differently. So try that. Try getting some books, try listening to them over and over again. Read up on individuals that you've never read up on before, and watch your mindset change over time. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of The Donkey and the Biatch, where we get our money together, get on the same page mentally to grow our businesses, to make an incredible life for ourselves. So make sure you like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one.